Great. So we are jumping in with Hashem's help to Sichos HaRan Kuv Chav Dalid 124. And we're going to learn a lot about the way that Reb Nosson really felt and appreciated just who Rebbe Nachman was, just who his Rebbe was, just what power his Rebbe had to be able to be ma'arer, to inspire the hearts of those who were listening to his teachings. And the Rebbe begins like this, and he says, Pam achas sha'al oisi b'lashon tema. Reb Nosson says, one time Rebbe Nachman asked me in a lashon with words or an expression of tema, of wonderment. And he said, Hashamatim imeni divrei musar. He said, have you ever heard me give you any musar? Va'amar, and then Rebbe Nachman followed up by saying, She'ena yachal loymar divrei musar. Rebbe Nachman said, I am incapable of giving musar. And the reason that I'm incapable of giving musar, said the Rebbe, is ki kol dibor musar shalai hayamutbol umurchotz b'demais. Every word of musar, every word of guidance, every word of holy, productive criticism and admonishment was, in the Yiddish, he says, farvashin mitrerin, was completely drenched with tears. That Rabbi Nachman felt the pain of a person who was distant from Hashem, who was finding it difficult to connect to Hashem. The Rebbe felt that so viscerally and so deeply that he couldn't even express it verbally, because it was farvashin mitrerin. It was mutbal umurchotz b'demais. He couldn't get a word out, because if Rabbi Nachman would begin to start to speak to a Jew about the importance of making sure that we're as aligned with the Kodesh Baruch Hu's Ratzon as we possibly can be, the Rebbe said he wouldn't be able to say anything, because each word was farvashin mitrerin. And that's why Rebbe Nachman did not give over his guidance and teachings in a way of musar beferish, right? In an explicit way of giving guidance straight, like the mochichim of the time. And Reb Nosson says when he was talking this over with a couple of the chaverim, with a couple of the chavraya, with the chasidim, he says it was bizarre to us and strange to us to hear Rebbe Nachman express that he was never accustomed to giving over musar. Said Reb Nosson, the way that it appeared to us is that kol dvarav him divrei musar gadol ma'od ma'od ke'ish be'eres mamish. Everything he said was musar. Every word in Likutei Moharan is musar, right? Every single thing that came out of the man's mouth was about how to work on ourselves and to grow closer and closer to Hashem. So what does that mean? Rabbi Nachman didn't give musar. The whole sefer is full of musar. Everything he taught is musar. So Reb Nosson explains, Ach be'emes, but the truth is, Lo yahaya ragil loymar divrei musar befeirush kederach hamoichichim. The way that Rebbe Nachman gave musar was not the general way that musar was given, where it was much more direct, and it addressed things that were being addressed to the individual with clear directives that a person is struggling with this, that a person is failing or falling short of standards in one area or another, and the moichiach would go and spell this out and really try to compel the person to improve. That we did not find by Rabbi Nachman. You don't find that approach at all. But says Reb Nosson, but don't make the mistake of thinking that Rabbi Nachman's way was not to address people's avodah and to encourage people to come close to Hashem. Of course, that was Rabbi Nachman's whole thing. See, he says, Aval afal pikein, but it's certainly true that kol dvarav v'chol sichaisav hayarak mi'inyan avodas Hashem. The Rebbe's whole zach, the Rebbe's whole inyan in the world, that he said in Chaim Aran, he said that for my own neshama, I didn't need to come down to this world again. He said, I'm a neshama mitukan. He said, my neshama is fixed. I came down to the world only to help bring other Jews closer to Hashem. That's what Rebbe Nachman said. He said, I'm a fixed neshama, a healed neshama. So every word that the tzaddik said was, of course, mi'inyan avodas Hashem. And Reb Nosson says, "V'chol devarav haya kigachle eish mamish." His teachings weren't just stam divrei Torah because he couldn't say musar. Every word is musar. And even if it looks like it's coming in the middle of a very lengthy, complicated Torah, where it's technical and it seems to have nothing more than pedantic value or pedagogic value from the standpoint of learning or teaching or limud Torah, Reb Nosson says no. Every kol dvarav, every word that the tzaddik said, heim divrei musar gadol ma'oid ke'ish be'eres mamish. They're words of guidance, they're words of musar, and the whole tachlis of them is not that a person should just learn them and then feel like the person's a little bit brighter, a little bit smarter, a person gained Torah knowledge. That's not the point. The point is that a person should get up afterwards, le'uvda u'lemaisa, and to find a way to apply it, to find a way to onboard it into one's own experience, to recognize that every word was meant for inspirational value primarily. Ke'esh by eres mamish. Ach be'emes, but Reb Nosson again clarifies, the truth is that lo yahayir ragaloi mar divrei musar beferish kederech ha'mechichem. I'm sorry, that's from the previous, yes. V'chol dvarav rather hayik kegach le'esh mamish. And then Reb Nosson continues, he says, he says, a person who merited to be there while Rebbe Nachman was saying these teachings and revealing his guidance and his eitzas and his incredible wisdom, said Reb Nosson, the tzaddik's words would enter that person's heart like a fire, like a torch, with all of the implications of what a fire is. It illuminates, it burns, it devours, right? It can take away all of the negative aspects, right? And what else can fire do? Fire can also make warm. All of the Rebbe's words were ke'esh by eres mamish. V'yefshel levar letzar lebiksav lebapeh oitzim tav ve'eras kedushas dibura. He says it's impossible to describe, not in the spoken word, not in the written word, the taveras kedushas devarav, the torch, the flickering torch of the holiness of Rabbi Nachman's words, that emerged from his holy mouth, hakadosh v'noira b'kedusha u'v'tahara, with holiness and with purity. Ashar kol dibar v'dibar shalai, to the extent that every single word of Rabbi Nachman, afilu b'sichas chulin, even in his non-Torah teachings or not explicitly Torah teachings, his sichas chulin, his regular conversations that Reb Nosson describes in Sichos HaRan in so many different ways, that Rabbi Nachman was always speaking about current events. He constantly needed to be updated on the news. He said, I don't know how a person can live without the news, because to Rabbi Nachman, everything that happened in the world was part of the story that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling. Part of the master plan that's unfolding, part of the Atzas Hashem, Succos. So to the Rebbe, every word that he spoke, Mikol Shekein Kishaya Medaber B'Avodas Hashem, Kishaya Omer Megala Torah, certainly, when he was speaking more explicitly about serving Hashem, or when he was revealing his Torah teachings, Hayakal Dibor V'Dibor Meir Umazir Umislayev Keish Loyet Rishpe Shal Heves. Says Rebbe Nosson, it was fire. The whole thing was straight mamish fire. Rishpe Shal Heves, like a sparkling, flickering, flaming torch. Every word that came out of his mouth, mamish fire. Umishaya Mazin Umakshil Ledvar Be'emes U'Tmimos. Says Reb Nosson, somebody who was really listening to Rabbi Nachman's words with truth and with simplicity and with innocence and with straightforwardness and with wholeheartedness and simplicity. Hayakal dibor v'dibor shalai, every word of the Rebbe, peireach, would fly out of the tzaddik's mouth, v'nichnas b'kirbay kelabas eish mamish, and again, like this glowing, flaming torch, the words would enter into that person's heart, achakal echad me'ashoimim, to the extent, to the point, that every person who was there listening, every word that came out of his mouth, and this says Reb Nosson the Chiddush, it wasn't just true for the Divrei Torah, that for sure, but even the Sichas Chulin, everything that the tzaddik said had this incredible impact, where it was able to bring a person to tremendous longing and yearning and binding to Hashem. Because the Rebbe's words were all surrounding around the tachlis. That was the main thing. We've spoken about this in the past, that the main thing in Breslov is the tachlis. What's the point? Why are we in this world? That the tzaddik refuses to allow a person, even for the most fleeting amount of time, to forget that we're in this world, really to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's it. And Yiddishkeit is not a facet of our identity. We spoke Sunday morning with some of the chevra here in Kesser Shem Tov. It's on YouTube already. Right? That the whole inyan of being a Yid is identity defining. Right? It's not a facet or an aspect. It's all of us, all the time. It's all of who we are. It's all of what we are. It's every experience that a person has. It's every moment of a person's life. The ups and the downs, the times when things are easier, the times when things are more challenging, the overtly holy and the moments that seem to be absolutely, completely mundane. It's all part of the tachlis. That's why we're here. To bring Hashem into that. To be mevatel ourselves and to surrender that to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the highest power. That's the whole tachlis. Every minute, bittul, bittul, bittul. I'm a shliach. I'm a person who is sent to this world on a mission for this, which means to battle with the illusion, with the Amalek, asher karcha baderech, that comes to cool us off and that tries to derail us and to make us feel chalishas hadas and to make us forget what life is all about. And simply by remembering, so then already that is the mission. That's the whole point that we're here, is to be accosted by all of the illusions of this world and to remember nonetheless of v'chol zeh shimcha lo yishachachnu, and to be a person that never ever ever forgets. The bechina of zecher tzaddik. The whole inyan of a tzaddik is zikaron, is just to remember. Right? And of course that's how we battle Amalek, like Reb Nosson says, that Amalek who wants to make us forget why we're in this world, Reish is goyim Amalek, Rosh Hashanah is rega, that Amalek wants to make us tunnel vision, focus just on the moment and forget the bigger picture of what it really means to be a soul in this realm. And we fall out of that and we think that there's planet Earth, and planet Earth is in a solar system, and the solar system, whatever, is in other galaxies, whatever it is. We don't even know where we are, Bichlal. I was just thinking that last night. I was going to sleep. Where am I? I'm in my bed. Where's the bed? I'm, in London, on this continent, the United Kingdom. Where is that on planet Earth? Where is planet Earth? Right? Again, it's in the solar system. Where is that? It's in the Milky Way. Where is that? Where? If you trace it back from far enough, it turns out that we have no idea where we are. We don't know what anything is, right? So sometimes it's a little bit more pleasant not to think about these things, but I think it's much, much, much more pleasant to actually think about these things and to be humbled by the realization that we have no idea where we are. We don't know where Olam Asiyah is. We don't know where we are, right? We're in the Mekayim Shel Olam, And when a person remembers that, Zecher Tzaddik, the Tzaddik is a person who's remembering this Nekuda all the time, that's the way to battle the energy of Amalek, which is all about Shikha, and Mamela, not that Zachar Machay Timcha Zecher is Zecher Amalek, or Zachar Asher Asalach Amalek. It's not simply to remember to wipe out Amalek, or to wipe out the remembrance of Amalek, or that a person needs to never forget Lo Sishkach, to wipe out Amalek. Says Reb Nosson in Likutei Halachos, that is how you battle Amalek, is Lo Sishkach, is by never forgetting. Is Zachar is Asher Asalach Amalek, is to constantly be in a state of remembering. That when we remember, so then we have hope. And that was what the Rebbe wanted to do, is just to remind us, the tachlis. Don't get stuck in the sadness, in the brokenness, in the despair. Ein shem yish ba'olam klal. Don't forget you're here on a mission. And all the while that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving life in your lungs, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving you breath, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving you another day, Rabba Munasecha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu believes in you. He doesn't believe in you to fix everything, because no one of us individually is called upon to fix everything. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu believes in our capacity to remember, and in so doing, to help bring an energy of remembering into this world that is so often frozen over with shikha, with forgetfulness, with a lack of consciousness, with ego magnification that shuts out the light of the divine and that causes all of our issues, bein adam la'atzmai, bein adam l'chaverai, and certainly bein adam l'makah. And by each one of us connecting to this energy of the tzaddik that's reminding us that the tzaddik is in Kedusha, the hepech of Amalek, because we have Reishis Goyim Amalek, but Am Yisrael are also called Reishis Tfuasai. And the Spitz, the pinnacle of a Yid, is the Bechina of Moshe Rabbeinu, is the Bechina of the tzaddik. And so the tzaddik is positioned the Neged Amalek. And the tzaddik's whole thing is to break us out of Meichen de Katnas and to bring us into Meichen de Gadlus, to have a much broader consciousness. All the while that a Jew is connecting to the Tachlis through the teachings of the tzaddik, so then you're fixing the whole world. And we don't really know. Even now science is just beginning to discover on a quantum level really the interconnectivity of everything. We don't really know what kind of impact our own awakening can have. We don't know what an awakening, what impact that awakening can have on our own lives, because sometimes it takes various shapes and forms. We don't know what level, what impact that awakening, or what level of impact that awakening can have on our circle. It's our family, our friends, the people that we come into contact with. But now I'm speaking on a much broader level, what kind of energy of wakefulness one Jew's remembering can bring down like a lightning bolt of a flash of illumination that in some sense impacts the entire planet and even beyond the planet, the entire Olam HaAsiyah. We just don't know these things. We're not privy to life on that level, and so we're living in such a limited way. We don't really know. We don't know anything, right? We don't really know anything, but we don't know how to measure the impact of our turning ourselves toward the words of the tzaddik that are ke'esh loy heit rishbe shal heves, that all of the words of the Rebbe, he says, had the capacity, Anshakol Echad, again, mehashoimim, that everybody who was listening to these words, ha'inim shachem ha'idei diburav la'Hashem yisbarach, were drawn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'skashras nifla v'slavis gedoyla la'Hashem yisbarach be'emes, with a tremendous binding and a tremendous hislavus, a passion for HaKadosh Baruch Hu be'emes. And here he says a phenomenal thing. He says, va'al pi roiv, most of the time, it appeared to each and every one of those who were standing in front of the glorified and awesome holiness of Rebbe Nachman, it appeared to us that we could not anymore have free, fair choice as to Sur Meira and Asei Toiv after experiencing what they experienced. While they were standing there, they felt that they could never, ever deviate from the will of Hashem ever again. That from that point on, we would most certainly, constantly need to just be in accordance with the will of Hashem. We would never, ever be able to be led astray by the forces of the Yetzer Hara to drag a person away from Hashem. It would have been impossible, because the level of clarity was so total that it was clear to them there's nothing else. There is absolutely nothing else. B'shamayim imal v'la'aretz mitachas ein oid. Ein oid. Mikol shekein l'shanas r'tzoni yisbarach la'avar chas v'shalom. Not just not to disconnect from the slightest deviation from the will, but certainly not to transgress, to do an aveira, afilu ezad davar kal ba'alma, even the slightest thing, it was impossible. Ki alev haya nimshach ma'oid la'Hashem yisbarach al yidei diburav hakadoshim asher efshar l'shar v'la'arach, because the heart was drawn after Hashem on account of the tzaddik's words, v'yaminu ba'Hashem u'v'Moshe avdai, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent tzaddikim into the world, and Hashem sent tzaddikim amitiyim into the world, a different category of messianic, redemptive tzaddikim. Moshe Rabbeinu, Rabbi Shimon, the Ari HaKadosh, the Hashem, Rebbe Nachman, tzaddikim who were revealing brand new giluyim that never existed before them, brand new. That all the other tzaddikim within those eras were branched off of the new giluyim that these tzaddikim were revealing, that were brand new layers of our conception of the divine and what it meant to serve Hashem. who Hashem is and how we're supposed to connect to Him. Each of these 5 tzaddikim, the Bechina of the Neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu, that keeps coming back throughout history to move the world closer and closer and closer to Geula consciousness, to the place of Asiroisi Lachem Lev HaEben, where our Kadosh Baruch Hu will swap out our heart of stone and replace it with a Lev Basar. That Lev Basar, like Rebbe Nachman said, is the same letters as Breslov, because that's what it means to have a Lev Basar. To be a person who's connected to the teachings of the tzaddik, to finally be able to come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with vulnerability, with authenticity, with real brokenness. That it shouldn't be a bechina of besvasav kibduni babalibam richak mimeni, where one's mouth is saying the right words but one's heart is distant. A person's leiv should be mamish a leiv basar, not a heart of stone. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent down these tzaddikim, vayaminu b'Hashem uva ma'isha avdai, that through the words of the tzaddik, the leiv ki al-leiv hayinimshach ma'oid la'Hashem Yisbarach, was mamish drawn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu al yedi diburav ha'kadoshim asher i'ashar l'shar v'la'arech, that there's no way to describe or in any way imagine what that was like. We were learning with the Chevra this morning in London. We have a Likutei Moharan Amid Yomi Chabura. Some of the Chevra are following along with us. We're in the middle of Torah Vav, and at the end of Torah Vav, Reb Nosson describes what it was like to be there. Or in Chaim HaRan, Reb Nosson describes what it was like to actually be there when the Rebbe was revealing the Giluyim. If anybody knows a little bit, Taravav, Soid Kavanas Elul, Baki Baratzai, Baki B'Shaiv, 2 times Yaboik, is Gematria Derech, right? That whole thing with Sag and Kasa and the Segol and the Chirik and Soid Kavanas Elul, Yemin, Pshuta, the whole thing, how the whole Taravav is folded into the Kavanas of the Arizal in a way that's Nifla V'Noira Ad L'Ma'od. And to us, it exists as words on a page in a book. And that's what it is. It's Torah Vav and Likutei Moharan. And Chevra have been learning it for 200 plus years. But imagine being there when those Giluyim were coming down for the first time. They didn't exist in any sefer before. It's mamish min hashamayim. Such a Torah is really min hashamayim. Like I said to the guys this morning, I can't imagine how somebody could really learn Torah Vav and understand it and not immediately recognize that this person was something else. He was a different level. He was a different kind of tzaddik. And again, you have to understand, I don't say this stuff dogmatically. I'm not a Breslover chassid. I didn't grow up like I don't consider myself part of any kind of community. If someone can bring me a sefer and show me something more astonishing, I will literally sit by whoever it is. I'm telling you because the proof is in the pudding. I'm not telling you from like some kind of like dogma. I'm just telling you the fact. There is nothing like Torah Vav. It just doesn't exist. Like Hayav Nivra. Again, Lanias Daiti, but I poked around enough. That like there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. There are Giluyim that the Rebbe is being Megala that are new, that are Giluyim Chadashim. There are Hasagas that the Rebbe is bringing down to enable a person to conceive of a HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the world and the Torah that did not exist before the Rebbe was Megala them. And of course, the Rebbe's Giluyim are built on the Giluyim of the Ari, and the Ari's Giluyim are built on the Giluyim. The Rebbe's Giluyim are, in a certain sense, built on Giluyim of the Baal Shem, and the Baal Shem is built on the Ari, and the Ari is built on Rashbi, for sure. Right? And none of these links could exist without the link prior to that link holding it up. There's no question about that. But people have to understand, the Rebbe is a new Gilui. He isn't just another tzaddik. Like you have this Rebbe and that Rebbe and the Breslover Rebbe. It's something else. It's something else. Reb Nosson is describing what it was like to be there when these Giluyim were coming into the world. He says, impossible to describe it, impossible to imagine it. And these are things that happened on this world not so long ago. It's shocking. Mamish. And here he says it. He says, and it's true that Gam Achshav, the same is true even in our day and age. Kol mi sheyasik b'sifrei Rabbeinu HaKadosh v'Hanoyer Zecher Tzaddik v'Kadosh Levracha, whoever involves himself or herself with the Sfarim of Rabbeinu, which is why Reb Nosson was Meiser Nefesh. He gave his whole life. He literally gave his life. Kipshuta. He risked his life millions of times to ensure that the tzaddik's words would be recorded for me and for you today. what we owe to Reb Nosson, what Yiddishkeit owes to Reb Nosson. We can't even imagine what Yiddishkeit would be like without the influence of Rebbe Nachman, either direct or mostly indirect. How much hope and how much chizuk and how much kirva and how much compassion and how much moich and the gadlus and how much we can't even imagine what Yiddishkeit would be like without the influence of the tzaddik, and it's all Reb Nosson. The Rebbe Nachman said, without Reb Nosson, not one word of my teachings would have been recorded, and it was clear to Rebbe Nachman, and he made it clear to his Talmidim, that every word that he was revealing was not for those who were standing there, but primarily it was for those generations to come. It was for me and you. We're the real Hasidim. We're mamish, the real, like the Rebbe had us in mind. He says, La'asher yeshnu payayim, v'la'asher einenu payayim. The teachings are for those who were there, but also for those who were not there. And the only way that the Rebbe could get us those teachings was through the Sfarim. So he says, Gam achshav kol mi sheyasek b'sifra Rabbeinu HaKadosh v'ner zecher tzaddik kadosh levracha. Anybody who engages in the Sfarim of Rabbeinu, v'ya'ayin v'yistakel behem be'emos u'b'tmimos, and will look at them with an open heart, with an open mind, without any preconceived notions and without any prior, sort of boundaries or borders that are preventing a person, holding a person back, but a person who's really seeking the truth, that person's heart will, without a question, be inflamed with a passion of love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and for His Torah and for Am Yisrael and for His tzaddikim. Ki kol devarav kekach le'esh. Because every word of the Rebbe is fire. And here in Sichos HaRan, just bring a few other sources, Reb Nosson also describes what it was like to be there at the time that Rebbe Nachman was speaking and revealing his teachings. He was an ish pele. He was a wondrous person. And Reb Nosson says, "V'darkei hayatamid." Rebbe Nachman's way always is shafilu kishahay medaber b'nei adam sichas chulin. Even when he was just saying, just regular, what appeared to be sichas chulin, just discussing current events and things that were going on in the community, or just stam speaking about different things. Hayaraglov, his feet, v'roiv gufay, and most of his body, meratzin ma'oid, was trembling. His whole body was shaking. Vayiraglav mizdazim mamish, his legs would mamish shake, ma'oid, very much, nismach ala shulchan, and when his feet were touching the table, hayashulchan, the whole table, im kol shara nashim anismachim ala shulchan, and everybody who was leaning on the table, the whole room was shaking. We have no asag of what this was. The Rebbe was a fire. The whole room was shaking. The whole room was shaking. Not just the Rebbe, the whole table was shaking, and all the people sitting around the table were shaking. It wasn't like, Stama gathering. The whole room was. We don't even we can't even imagine what that is today. We can't even imagine. He's trying to describe it, but a little bit you could have a hasaga, a little taste. You could imagine imagining it. So he says Rabbi Nachman was shaking, the table was shaking, all the people who were leaning on the table, gamkein meratzin machmasai, were shaking as a result of the Rebbe. The Rebbe's whole body was constantly in a state of tremendous trembling. Sometimes I wonder if I had lived in that dar, I probably would have been a misnagid, in a certain sense. Because by today's standards, they would have considered him a madman, like totally insane. By today's standards of what we consider normal. Because he wasn't normal. He wasn't normal. He wasn't mad. He was a ir b'kadosh min shemay nachas. He was an angel in a human form. So what do you expect? But how many of us would have been put off? You have to understand. I said a story this morning. You'll hear it on the recording. I'm not going to repeat it again now. But the kind of mesiras nefesh that those early Breslover Hasidim had, to discover within themselves the humility, really the humility, to be able to draw close to this person. And they were blessed, because there's no other way. Meaning, if it was really true that you have a person who's sitting in the village in Ukraine where there were many other kinds of Hasidim in Uman, there were Talmud Hasidim, there were other Hasidim who lived in Uman as well. And Reb Nosson is describing what he was. And anybody who has a little bit seichel who learns the Sfarim can see what he was. And everybody didn't sit by him. And mamish, at the end of his life, at the peak, Rebbe Nachman had as many Hasidim as Humble Me currently has in the WhatsApp group for Amud Yaimi. This was Rebbe Nachman's whole Hasidus. You understand? 800 Hasidim, 700, 800 Hasidim. That's it. And other Hasidim, this was before the Holocaust. You had millions of Hasidim. There were other Hasidus in the hundreds of thousands of Hasidim. And the Rebbe, who was eventually, historically, going to become the Rebbe of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Hasidim over 200 years, and it's growing and growing and spreading like the wildfire that he was and that he is. You have to say that people were blinded. You have. There's no other rational explanation. You have to say that min hashamayim, they were blinded, and that the light was hidden. And you have to say the same thing today. People are blind. Otherwise, there's no explanation, because there's nothing like this in the world. And again, I'm telling you, Chevra, you're already in. I think I'm a normal, rational person, reasonable person. I'm happy to sit with anybody in the world and have this out with them. And again, I'm mamish not devoted to the Rebbe als Breslov. I'm devoted to emes als emes. You show me emes, I'll go from one end of the world to the other for it. I love truth. And I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like it. There's nothing like it. So what's pshat that the whole world is still kvetching and complaining, of all the issues that we have, and we have the solution, and people aren't running to grab it with both hands, like their life depended on it, because their life depends on it. They just don't know it, because they don't know it. And it's still hidden. And you have to appreciate what a gift it is that we're among the very few. And I always say we're pioneers, because in relation to where this thing's going to go, nothing started yet. A little bit things are starting to pick up more and more and more and more in the most beautiful, wonderful way. Nothing started. This is it. This is Hasirois Lechem Leiv Even, and to give Am Yisrael a Leiv Basar. These teachings, this consciousness, this is for everyone. My fire will burn until Mashiach comes, and somehow HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the gift, our neshamas, our I don't know, some kind of very, very special neshamas that are privileged to be able to taste from the yayin Hungary. Like the Rebbe has this mashal, the Hungarian wine. Even before we get to the bar, we're already tasting the Tardat Tikastima. Sipurim Maisius. Who else revealed? Who? Tell me who. Again, in all of the Jewish history, tell me who. The man was in a different category. He pushed it. There was no one who existed in that Inyan. There's just no one. He revealed not just a new derech. He revealed a new world, a new universe that didn't exist before. A new Yiddishkeit. Which a new layer, a new era. This was the Rebbe. You have to understand. You have to understand who the Rebbe is. So we would have thought he was crazy. Gufay mizda, who do you know whose whole body is shaking all the time? Like, unless Nebuch, a person has Parkinson's or something, but he didn't. He had other things. He didn't have Parkinson's, but he had tuberculosis. But why? Because he was mamish not from this planet. He was not from this planet. And says Reb Nosson, Umishaloi zacha liris hayira shayamu nachas al panav tamid, a person who didn't see the yira that was on his face, the fearsome awareness, the direct consciousness of the presence of Hashem, shivisi Hashem, l'nagdisamid constantly, says Reb Nosson, lo ra'a yira mi olam. You don't know what yira is. Never saw yira in your life. V'ayalav kol minei chen sheba olam. And the Rebbe had on him every kind of grace, every kind of chen. And I'm so happy that we don't have pictures of the Rebbe. I'm so happy that there are no portraits of Rabbi Nachman or Reb Nosson. Because I don't even imagine that, I don't even think they had faces. What does Rabbi Nachman look like? Like what, he looks like Sefer Likutei Moharan. If you could somehow condense all the information and project it as one unified thing, what does the Rebbe look like? It would be so limiting to have a picture of him and hang him on the wall. And the Rebbe is not in this world. He doesn't have a face. The Rebbe is kol. He's not even a guf. The Rebbe is kol kulai or, kol kulai ruchni, kol kulai das. That's it. That's what the Rebbe is. That's what he looks like. He looks like his das. And he had all kinds of chen. Yira, and he was full of yira va'ava, and he was full of love. Ukedusha neflav and erev b'chol aver ve'aver, and every limb was filled with awesome and fearsome holiness. And Rabbi Nachman was distanced from all negative midas and from all negative desires in the most simple, basic, just black and white way. It is impossible for the human brain to imagine there was no one in the world like him. And he was a wondrous chiddush. He was a wondrous novelty. He was a brand new revelation. He wasn't just, the Baal Shem Tov came, and now there's the Sichos HaRan, and there's Samer Chasidus, and Bel's Chasidus, and Kazan's Chasidus, and this Chasidus, and Breslov Chasidus. No, those were all great tzaddikim, but they all functioned within the category of the Baal Shem. Rebbe Nachman was a Gilui Chadasha. Just like the Arizal was a Gilui Chadasha, and just like the Baal Shem HaKadosh was a Gilui Chadasha, Rebbe Nachman was a new Gilui. She'ein kedegmasai, nothing like that ever existed. That the mouth can't say and that the heart can't imagine, can't think. And in Sichos HaRan, which is really our subject, we're going to get there, but I'm just bringing it because it's relevant here. He says, "Ve'ikar hachidushim v'hamoifsem ha'ayroim shari'ina mimenu zal." Reb Nosson says that unlike by other Hasidim in Breslov, they don't say miracle stories from Rebbe Nachman. There are maybe 2, 3, 4 stories, where you saw a moifis, but that wasn't the Indian in Breslov ever. Because Reb Nosson says, you want to know why? Because the greatest miracle that Rebbe Nachman did, says Reb Nosson, is the Hasidim. That's the Iker Chiddush and the moifis, the wondrous moifis that the Rebbe did, who rak be'inin eskarvis Yisrael la'aviyam shavashamayim, because that was his whole thing. There was no gimmick, there was no shtick, there was no anything. Breslov is just the tachlis, the essence of the essence of the essence of Yiddishkeit. It's nothing else. And to the degree that there's anything else mixed in, it's distant from Breslov. And there's Zelo Breslov. Breslov is just the Nakuda. His skarvus levavis Yisrael la'aviyam shamayim. That's it. There's nothing else. Shetekid k'shenichnas echad etzlai v'ratzel eskarv l'Hashem yisbarach, and that's the key part. When a person came to the Rebbe, not stam as some kind of spiritual voyeurism, where he's coming in, and it says in Sichos HaRan, somebody once came to the Rebbe and said, "Hey, Reini," all right, what did he say? He said, "I want to see your derech," right? Show me, I'm interested to see your derech. Rebbe Nachman responded very, very harshly. The Rebbe responded with a pasuk. I think either we learned this or we will learn this, but it's in Sichos HaRan. The Rebbe responded with a pasuk, "Ladas ba'aretz darkecha." You're coming. You're in the aretz. You're a person who's mamish megusham, and you're looking now for drachim. You poke around and find this derech and what is Hashem and that derech. Oh, it's fascinating. You read, academic Breslov literature. It's fascinating. It's very interesting and academic. That's not what it is. In order to really be mekabel the Rebbe's leiv basar, you have to really come with a little bit of a leiv basar already. And that's why you see the people who go through pain in their life and challenge in their life, irrespective of whatever shitas they had on Breslov and whatever messiahs they have and whatever this and that, all of a sudden a person goes through a little bit. I see this routinely again and again and again and again with the most hardened people that you would never have dreamed would be open to the Rebbe. They go through difficulties, which invariably everybody does in life to one degree or another, and you find all of a sudden they're open. All of a sudden they're open, and it's not relevant any ideological obstacles, because they need to breathe. And so it's not relevant because it's not on the level of calculation, it's just on the immediate necessity to take a breath of air, and the Rebbe is the air that they need. It's an incredible thing. So Reb Nosson says, but they had to want it. He says immediately, when somebody came forward and wanted and desired to come close to Hashem, that person became a different human being. And I see this routinely. I'm telling you, Chevra, I'm zocha to be involved in this work now for a relatively long time. Long is relative, but a decade is I think, a pretty decent amount of time. I see this keseder. To the Chevra who are shaykh for this, it is transformative. It is transformative. To a person who takes it seriously, who's committed, who's consistent. We're doing now at Likutei Moharan Amud Yomi. Somebody starts from the beginning and they really stick with it. It will give you a new brain, Chevra, a new moyach. We'll swap out the old moyach, drain that swamp, which most of our moychin are usually, and it will mamish give you a new brain. The way that you think is different. The way that you process is different. The things that make you happy, the things that make you sad, the she'ifas, everything is different. And that's the moifis of the Rebbe. So I don't need any greater moifis, to tell some miracle story. Humble me, I'm a moifis. I've said this before. The fact that the Rebbe, took a 17, 18-year-old who was B'chalal, no shaykhis to Yiddishkeit. I didn't want it. I was completely disconnected, disillusioned, very angry. And one time I heard Torah Samach Vav, Ramata Frank, for the Chaver know the story. I stumbled just by chance, not by chance, by coincidence, from Hashem, that I went over there and Reb Nosson, where Ramata was speaking. It was probably this time of year, it was before Purim, and he was talking on Torah Samach Vav, and that was it. I was blown away. I had never heard anything like that in my life. And it wasn't because I was an Am Haaretz, which I was and I still am. It was because genuinely, there's nothing like this. It is totally unparalleled. Totally and entirely unparalleled. And so I'm the Rebbe's moifis. I still have a long way to go in so many ways. But the way that the Rebbe and the Rebbe's derech, and the way that the Rebbe brought Hashem into my life transformed me. Tekef nepach miyad li'ish acher mamish. Different person. Va'oitzam ha'yira, v'ha'esorus, v'ha'eslavus, v'ha'hurit shuva be'emes la'amito, shehichnis b'chol echad v'echad jazachal lamed l'fanav. And the depth of the Yira Shamayim, and the awakening, the inspiration, and the slavas, the passion, and the thoughts of true tshuva, that a person wants to mamish, turn their life around, that every single person experienced when they stood before the Rebbe, right? Of all the days were ink, and of all the whatever, we couldn't describe it. Says Reb Nosson, ki lo nira kazois, because nobody ever heard of such a thing. There was never such a thing in Jewish history, says Reb Nosson, where an individual was able to have this effect on the ketanim, on the gedolim, on the greatest mekubalim, on the lowliest sinner, and that the Rebbe was able to be able to influence and impact each person in their own way, with the Asagas Ben and the Asagas Talmud of Likutei Moharan Tanyana Tar Zayin, with the Aye and Maloi, with the Bechin of Ratzai and the Bechin of Shoiv, and there was never anything like it. So again, don't you think that such a person would have had more Hasidim? No. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows just the right time for things to be revealed in the world, and they will be revealed when they ought to be revealed, and not a moment earlier. And the process is still unfolding. The Rebbe is not dead. The Rebbe is not gone. The Rebbe is yater mibichayoi. The Rebbe is found more in the world now that he's not in a guf anymore than he was when he was in the guf, like all the tzaddikim, like the Zohar Kodesh says. And you see this. Chaver, again, I check in with my wife all the time. I want her to tell me if I'm delusional, meaning if I'm mamish, like stam saying shtuyot, then lock me up. But what's crazy is that all the craziest things that I've been saying for years and years, we see it happening. If I didn't have any evidence, so I'd stam be a madman. But you see it. Open your eyes. Look at the Jewish world. It is happening. And the Rebbe's Inyan is growing and spreading in the most unlikely places, in the most unlikely ways. And Uman every year is growing, and the Rebbe Zach, it is mamish happening. Reb Nosson probably felt like a crazy person, because Reb Nosson was much more intense than I was in this Inyan. You read, and he didn't have the proof. He didn't have the evidence. Breslov was tiny. The persecution was absolutely not to be believed. And where was the evidence? And Afal Pikein, Reb Nosson knew, because Reb Nosson knew. Reb Nosson knew. You have to read Olam L'Trufa as one of the most important Breslover Svarim, to read Reb Nosson's letters. That's really where the good stuff is, because you can see it like applied Breslov consciousness, like in day-to-day life, in letters having to do with just all different kinds of inyanim, and how Reb Nosson had this ironclad, unshakable vision of Rebbe Nachman's Eish, Tukad, burning in ever-increasing measure in quality and quantity, ad bias HaMashiach, until the whole entire Am Yisrael was gifted with a messianic consciousness that Rebbe Nachman is trying to gift us with. Then Mashiach will be here. Because then Am Yisrael will be activated, and then we're going to be able to do our job vis-a-vis the Umas HaOlam. And ki beis tefili yikar l'chol ha'amim. Rabbi Nachman spoke about the non-Jews more than any other tzaddik. I've mentioned that in the past. Because the Rebbe was a mamish of Mashiach neshama. And he came to reveal the Mashiach, the nitzitz of Mashiach inside all of us. And it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of effort. A person who's in this work, I can't tell you the frustration that I feel. I'm so frustrated. I'm mamish, you can't imagine. Because I'm also suffering from this inyan of blindness. Can't people see? Don't people know? Like don't people understand what a gift we have? Where are they? Where are they? It's very beautiful. 100 views on YouTube. You're dealing with mamish, the gold of the gold of the gold of the healing, of the remedy of everything we need. And lat. I have to constantly give myself chizuk. Be patient. To be patient, but it's so hard to be patient because people are suffering. And we mamish have what it takes, and sometimes people themselves don't know what's good for them, but they're not ready. They have to be ready. It has to come from them, and so our job is just to make it accessible, and our job is to try to teach it and to learn it, to embody it, to live it, and to project it to the world, and to believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a master plan, and it is happening, but it's happening so painfully slowly, but it's happening, and it will continue to happen. Over the next few years, over the next few decades, this Eish is going to spread and spread and spread and spread and spread ad bias HaMashiach. And Reb Nosson over here says that in no uncertain terms, Ki loy nira kazois v'loy nishma ba'olam. We have never heard such a thing or seen such a thing, that one individual was able to bring about such a degree of awakening. Ashreinu, what a privilege. We think it's a small thing. We get together for our Monday afternoon shiur in Sichos HaRan. It is not simple. We're mekusher to this tzaddik. Zelo pashut, on your worst day. You have a kesher. Rebbe Nachman says that people, even lowly people who are connected to the tzaddik emes, are higher even than big tzaddikim, in a certain sense, that are not mekusher, or chatz v'shalom, that are misnagid. This is our sharish neshama. We're plugged in. It's good. We have a big Succos. We have to understand that and appreciate that. Okay, let's go through the next Sicha a little bit more quickly. It's a little bit more straightforward. Sichos HaRan Kuf Chav Hey. I finished up with the last few minutes. B'Chag Succos Taf Kuf Ayin. And the Chag Succos Taf Kuf Ayin, which if I'm not mistaken was the year 1810, it was the Succos before Rebbe Nachman was nifter, the Succos before the final Succos of the Rebbe's life, because the Rebbe was nifter on Cholamid Succos of the following year. So Az Amar Mi Inyan Esrog. Rebbe Nachman spoke about the Inyan of the Esrog. And he said, Shalafi B'chinas Hayamim Nairaim Ra'u Shi'ilai Lanu Esrog Na'eh. Said Rebbe Nachman, based on the incredible Yamim Nairaim that they had, he said it's a Ra'i for us to have an Esrog Na'eh, beautiful Esrog. Like we already learned earlier in Sichos HaRan, that those two things are connected. That Lafi, the amount that a person cries on Yom Kippur, that person will be zeicha to a beautiful esrog, because of course the esrog is the lave of the person, right? And those two things are connected. That year there were no esrogim in the whole that whole area. Can you imagine that? They thought that they were going to have Succos without an esrog. What do you even do? So, do you take the other 3 minim? Like, what do you do if you? I don't even know. Is there any value to taking 3 of the 4 minim? But this is the way it was. They didn't have esrogim like we have it. It wasn't simple. There was not one single esrog in the whole country at erev Succos until erev Succos. Sha'as Hashem Yisbarach nisim, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu did miracles, v'sibos b'derech nes, and there were just remarkable things b'derech nes. Shebo esrogim l'ksas hayaris, that were a few esrogim that came to a few of the cities. Can you imagine the people who wanted the Succos of being able to have an esrog for Succos, and I'm sure that they were making it to everybody else, and I'm sure everybody else used the esrog for sure. Right, but to own the esrog, they were paying exorbitant amounts of money to buy an esrog. We think today you pay $100. It's still a lot for a fruit, obviously. $150, $200. They were giving 50 gold coins. Gold. 50 gold coins. Adumim is red, is gold coins. V'yoyser, and even more than that, about esrog echad. They were mamish giving away their life savings. They were emptying their bank accounts and remortgaging and financing their houses mamish for an esrog. For an esrog. About esrog echad. Just to have an esrog. Because what else is life worth than having an esrog on Succos? What are we in this world for? Yiddishkeit is it. It is the main and only thing, and everything else is part and parcel of it. But it is all there is, and we can't be on Succos without an esrog. And there's no cheshbon of what's going to be after Succos. I need to have an esrog. V'gam l'kilas Breslov ba'esrog mohuder ma'od liyad Rabbeinu Zatzal. And to the Kehillah of Breslov came in one very beautiful esrog to the hand of Rabbeinu. And Rabbi Nachman had such tremendous joy from this. Rabbi Nachman said, bring instruments, bring the chaver together, bring your guitars, bring everything. And they brought instruments, and just because they were celebrating this, that they had an esrog for Succos. Rabbi Nachman was very sick because it was toward the end of his life. For 3 days straight, the Rebbe's whole mood was different because of this esrog vayibari, and all of his health issues disappeared. His tuberculosis was put on pause because of this esrog for 3 full days. And a esrog from the incredible joy that the Rebbe had from this esrog. And even after Succos was finished, the Rebbe was speaking so much about this esrog. And he said, we don't know. We just don't know the incredible preciousness of the mitzvah of holding an esrog. Gewalt, chevra, like Succos is coming. You have to understand, we're going to have Succos soon. What that is to hold an esrog. We don't know what it is. I hope your hearts are yearning. I feel in my heart a yearning. We're coming to Succos to hold an esrog, to smell the esrog, to shake the esrog. He says we don't know what it is. But we see we see that Jews are spending tons and tons of money, especially relative to what you're getting. You're getting a fruit, so what's an esrog usually? It's like $1, and people are paying lots of money, many pounds, many dollars, many ruble. Yoiser al shar mitzvahs, in a certain sense, sometimes it's even more than they pay for other mitzvahs. He says that itself should be an indicator as to how precious the mitzvah is, maybe if they don't even know it. Mistama mitzvazu yikar ma'od ma'od. Mistama, it's not for nothing that people are willing to spend so much money. It must be that this mitzvah is very precious. Asher ein l'shayr. We're not able to imagine it. Asher ein anu yodim goydam alas. We just don't know. We just don't know what it is. If we would know how precious it is, every Jew would spend however much money to be able to make sure they can acquire a mahudar esrog. Ki Yisrael am kadeshim chachamim v'kashal ataisam. He says our nation is a nation of wise people, and they're not idiots. They wouldn't allow themselves to be drawn into this racket, which essentially today it's become a bit of like a mafia business. They keep on the prices go higher and higher and higher. But we're not meaning we wouldn't stand for it. Obviously, if we're willing to pay that amount of money, whether or not that we should be paying that amount of money, they should be charged that amount of money, it's a separate thing. But the fact that Am Yisrael are willing to put up with it is because that's reflective of the truth that there's something here that really is worthy of this expenditure. Certainly, if they're spending this amount of money on this mitzvah, it's not for nothing. And he kept on talking about this incredible mitzvah, and he said many wondrous things about the greatness of the esrog. Here in Yemei Maranat, which is Reb Nosson's biography, where this will come to the end, Rebbe Nosson says the same story, but he tells it over slightly differently, with a couple of extra details. So we'll go through this very quickly. Of Yemei Maranat, the Yitzhak's brought in Yemei Maranat in Reb Nosson's biography, or autobiography, which he wrote and recorded about his own life. He says, V'hine b'shana azos in 1810, Tuf Kaf Ayin, lo yehei esrogim mitzuyim klal. We didn't find any esrogim. Ukvar avar Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim mishnayim u'shlishi yom achar mamish ready Rosh Hashanah pass Yom Kippur. 3 days after Yom Kippur, v'adayin lo higiu esrogim l'medinasenu. No esrogim had arrived. There was no shipment of esrogim because, of course, esrogim don't grow in Ukraine. Uvalel Matzah Shabbos Shu Yom Rishon Lefnei Succos. Matzah Shabbos, which was erev Succos, right? Because Succos was then on a Sunday night. Higiu esrogim l'kilas kodesh Nemerav. There was some esrogim that came to the nearby city of Nemerav. And there was a tremendous rash, a tremendous noise, and a tumult. There were people in Nemerav that had ordered esrogim that were waiting for the shipment, and they're waiting day after day after day, and it's getting mamish close to Sukkos. Nothing, and then esrogim came. And they sent some esrogim here to Breslov, says Reb Nosson. Rebbe Naftali Nasam Isha Holchem Lepoi Kedesh Yisam Esrogim Lamakam Acher, and Rebbe Naftali went and he mamish traveled with the person who was bringing the esrogim to make sure that the esrogim didn't go anywhere else. They came before dawn. The Kitzos Rabbeinu Zal, and they woke up the Rebbe. V'kana esrog noev v'nifla, and he bought a most beautiful esrog v'ayeli simcha v'chedev gedola rabba v'atzuma b'li shiur, and he was out of his kalim with joy. V'amr Reb Naftali, and he said to Reb Naftali, Haloika shenechnasta li'ir lepoi, when you came to this city, niskala ar gada b'choloi lamais. Reb Nachman said, and he was sleeping at the time, just to give you a little, right, Reb Nachman was sleeping. He said, when you walked in, there was a light that was revealed in all of the worlds. Ki adati shiyu esrogim. I knew there would be esrogim. Because he said, I relied on the tefillah of the Berditchever. Because he is the pe'er, like Reb Nachman would always refer to the Berditchever as the pe'er, the tefillin of Klal Yisrael, and that's one of the most famous teachings of the Berditchever is about the tefillin, right? That we wear tefillin that praises Hashem, and Gavalt Hashem wears tefillin that praises us, right? And that the Berditchever's Inyan was tefillin, was pe'er, was mikamcha Yisrael, right? He was the pe'er. So I knew there would be esrogim in our Medina, but that there would be esrogim that came poi. Was da is the fabrik von Yiddishkeit. Shekan, said Reb Nachman about Breslov, who base hayoter shel yadas, is the factory of Judaism. That we produce Jews here. This is a factory. Reb Nachman said Breslov is a factory of Yiddishkeit. You didn't come in on an assembly line, and they're, like we learned, nepach leish acher, and we pump them out, Yidden with hearts on fire. And it's true today too. Breslov is a factory of Yiddishkeit. Zel Davar Nifla. He says that's mamash apella that the esrogim came to the factory. It's impossible to describe or to explain. He said again, for 3 days, he didn't feel any of the pain that he felt Ordinarily, because of his joy, we got to call instruments, so that because the joy was so great. He was just busy the whole time talking about this esrog. And again, he spoke about how incredible it is. This mitzvah of the esrog, right, which is the Sicha that we just learned. There were cities that did not have an esrog. They were paying 60, 70 gold coins for an esrog. And Rabbeinu said, Am Yisrael really know what it's all about. They know. They know to spend lots of money on an esrog. And it goes back to the beginning, because what's an esrog? It's a lave. And what's a lave? It could either be a lave that's full of blemishes, and it could be a lave pagam, and it could be a lave even, or it can be a lave basar. And so how wonderful that the lave basar of the esrog Noah came to Breslov, the factory of Yiddishkeit that swaps out your lave even, it just pulls it out and it just installs a lave basar. How fitting, and how fitting that Am Yisrael know that Rahman Aliba boy, that the main thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants is authenticity. The main thing HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants is vulnerability. The main thing HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants is your heart. So Am Yisrael know this, and they're willing to spend lots of money on a good heart. It's a good thing, he says, that the reasons for the mitzvahs and the depth of the mitzvahs isn't revealed. He says it would get out of hand. What Jews would be willing to do for an esrog would be too much. So a little bit, we know that you got to pay a lot of money, but people would mamish risk their life if they knew what a mitzvah the esrog was, how precious the esrog was, and what a privilege that we know for sure. If anything is uncertain in the world, we know for sure that coming up in another few months we're going to have Succos, and we know for sure by Ezras Hashem that we're going to have Daled Minim. What a Succos, what a privilege. Anything else that's going wrong in your life, anything else that's falling apart in your life, anything else that's uncertain in your life, it's not worth being besimcha, knowing that that's coming. And already, if nothing else is happening, aside from the fact we're coming to Chodesh Adar, Purim is coming up, etc. Pesach, unbelievable. What it is to be a Yid, you have to appreciate this, what it means. Ashreinu, Ashreinu, Ashreinu. That not only that we're Mizari Yisrael, Shalei Asani Goy, that we're able to be the inheritors of this incredible Nachlas Yaakov, but beyond that, we're Zeicha to be connected to the Or HaOyres, to the foreman of this factory of Yiddishkeit who's overseeing the whole production. What a Succos that we have a kesher to this tzaddik who's taking away our heart of stone bit by bit and replacing it with a heart of flesh. Ashreinu matayv chalkeinu Yidden. Thank you so much for joining us. I apologize, I'm a little bit more fired up with my Breslov side today because we're in the middle of Torah Vav, and I mean, how many times have I learned Torah Vav? I'm telling you, if you haven't learned Torah Vav, you have to learn Torah Vav. It's a miracle. It's a miraculous lesson. Ashreinu Yidden. Ashreinu matayv chalkeinu. Yeah, let's quickly do one question. We're already over time and I have to run, so let's just do one question quickly. Yeah.
So are you talking about the sixth lesson in Likutei Moharan, or what are you talking about?
Yes, the sixth lesson in Rebbe Nachman's primary sefer called Likutei Moharan, which is the collected teachings of Rebbe Nachman. It's called Torah Vav. It's the sixth teaching. And if you go on YouTube, you'll find the last about 4 shiurim, today was the 5th, in our daily learning of Likutei Moharan, we're up to Torah Vav. And so we started from the beginning, and you can tune in and listen to the whole thing. Or you can go on. Yeah.
Is your Gemara shiur also on YouTube?
I don't give a Gemara shiur.
Oh, I thought you said. Okay.
Yeah, no, the shiur is Likutei Moharan. There are a number of other shiurim as well, but that's on. I leave the Gemara to the others. I learn Gemara and love Gemara, but that's not my Indian in the world. There are others who are teaching Gemara, and that's fine.
I was interested in the sharing Gemara that had the Tzaddik interpretation of it as well.
Maybe one day.
Yes.
Maybe one day.
I think of people like Rabbi Shalom Osh, You know who he is?
Of course.
Do you regard him as being an authentic expression of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, or not? Is he kind of gone off with his own thing?
Listen, I'm not the authority on what's authentic or not authentic. From my perspective, every person's authentically them. You know, the question is is it authentic for you? Meaning is and some people that kind of thing and that approach is useful for. Other people are drawn to other things, but there's no question about it that he's a tremendous reflection of so many very important and very deep elements of Rebbe Nachman's path. There's no question about it.
Yeah, and if I can, one more. You were talking about the difference and the superiority of Breslov, but the other big kind of Hasidic sect at the moment is Chabad Lubavitch.
Sure.
And so, why is there any particular things you can think of offhand which illustrate the superiority of Breslov?
Right. So this is a huge topic. You'll notice I never use the word superior. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's not superior. Just like, you know, no part of the body is superior over the others. They're just different. But the way that they function in and of their own functionality is unique. And Chabad Lubavitch has its unique aspect, and Breslov has its unique aspect. From the standpoint of redemptive teachings that brought a new perception of godliness that didn't really exist prior, it may be said with some confidence that the Breslover focus on hispodidus, right, which means to speak to God in your own language and to regard Hashem as your friend in a certain sense, who's really with you. That's something that, even though the Baal Shem Tov generally spoke about many ideas of Dveikus, B'chal Derech HaChadeu, and Lubavitch certainly, you know, very, very deep teachings about and practices to be able to bring God into one's life, there was a uniquely intimate element that Rebbe Nachman revealed that you don't find in any of the other Hasidic approaches before him, that's refracted uniquely in his stories, which was something else that was completely unique, that in Lubavitch they don't have such a thing of the stories, as well as tied into so many of the other revelations of Rebbe Nachman, whether it was the parables, the stories, the melodies, and so many other things that are there to reinforce this aspect, right? Another thing, to turn the Torah into tefillah. You don't have that concept in Lubavitch or anywhere else, which doesn't make Breslov better or worse, but it requires us to recognize its unique position in the constellation of the unfolding of the light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, ultimately, you know, and that's what we're focusing on. And so it's a very specific role that Breslov plays, and certainly, again, seeing that as sort of the trunk of the tree, all the others are branches off of the trunk. So that means that they're all, once Rabbi Nachman brought this down to the world, you're going to find these teachings in all of them. The question is, who originated them? And Rabbi Nachman is a unique gilui, the likes of which didn't exist before. And at least in my experience and opinion, and the mainstream Breslov theology. Of course, Lubavitchers will have a very different opinion on this. That's beautiful. I can just speak from my truth.
Yeah, I tried to do some. Obviously, I've had this question a bit of time, and I tried to do some research, and I really only got one answer. And the answer I got was that a typical thing is Hisbonenut and Hisbodedut.
Right.
Hisbonenut is not which Lubavitch is. Most people have difficulty in doing that. And therefore, even in Lubavitch, there are not that many people do it. But Hisbonenut is something that everybody can do.
That's right.
And that is kind of an expression of the difference.
Exactly.
I just wondered if you agreed with that.
Yes, without a question. And again, you know, there's room for Hisbonenus also, even in Breslov, like you know, and there are sources in Breslov about that. But this aspect of the immediacy of being able to just open your mouth and talk with no particular words at no particular time in no particular place and directly connect to God, that's a brand new revelation. Okay, Yidden Yashakach, thank you so much. Thank you for joining. Looking forward to continuing next week, Be'ezras Hashem. All the best. Have an amazing rest of your week. Thank you. It's so great to see you and to learn with you. Yashakach, thank you all. Thank you. שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי, מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני